All right, folks, a warm welcome to this AWS Solutions Architect course. My name is Savitra Sirohi, and I'll be your instructor throughout this course. Okay, so firstly, I hope you can see my screen, right? So I have this Chrome browser open, and I have this slide open here. So I hope you can see that, and also I hope you can hear me clearly. All right. If not, you can let me know. You can, in general, you can use the questions section of your webinar tool to communicate with me. So we'll have you on mute, though. All right. So this is something unfortunate, right? But based on experience, this is what works best. So I'll do the talking, and we'll have to keep you on mute. However, we'll have a lot of interaction, and I'll explain how we'll do that interaction in a bit. All right. So let me start by introducing the course to you, right? And then this will take maybe 10 to 15 minutes, and then I'm going to stop and let you ask questions. Okay? So let me just explain the objectives, the mechanism, the mechanics of the course, and then we'll stop and do a bit of Q&A. Okay, so first of all, the course is designed around the Solutions Architect certification exam. All right, so this is the Solutions Architect exam as administered by AWS, Amazon Web Services, right? And you can see there's a link here on the slide. This is the blueprint, which means the plan of the exam, right? So the blueprint talks about what are the topics, what's the weightage given to each topic. So this particular course is designed around this blueprint. Okay, so if you're pursuing that exam, if you want to take that exam in the near term, this is the right course for you. All right. Now, if you're not interested in the exam, right, you just want to use AWS in your projects, that's fine as well. That's fine as well, because the exam basically tests your readiness to play the solutions architect role in a project. All right. So you may have either objective, and this course is suitable for you. All right. Now, however, this is a solutions architect course. Now, if you're a developer, or if you're a system administrator, or if you're interested in DevOps, for example, then this may not be the best course for you. All right, so we'll discuss all that. I'm going to explain the various certifications that are available, and then when we do our Q&A, we can discuss this aspect a bit. Okay, but this is the objective of this course. All right, now let's take a look at the modules that we have. So we have 10 modules. All right, so we have 10 modules, and each module is we'll need 3 hours for each module. All right, and we have 2 hours per session, right? So this is a 15-day course running Monday to Friday, right? So each module will run across 2 days. So today we'll do module 1, and then the first hour of tomorrow we'll do module 1 as well, right? And then we'll start module 2. Okay, so that's how this is going to work. And the way the course is structured is today we'll do an introduction, and then from the next module, from module 2 onwards, we'll talk about the basic or core AWS services, and these are EC2, Elastic Cloud Compute, which is under the compute category. We'll talk about a bunch of storage services, S3, simple storage service, Elastic Block Store, and others as well. That's in module 3. In module 4, we'll talk about networking, especially VPC, Virtual Private Cloud. And in module 5, we'll talk about database services, 4 of them, and especially we'll talk about RDS, Relational Database Service. Okay, so in these modules, modules 2, 3, 4, and 5, we'll be talking about the core AWS services, stuff that that are commonly used, right? And when you start using AWS, these are the things that you need to know. Okay, AWS is a very big suite of services now, but don't let that it's not necessary that you learn everything in one go. Okay, so you have to focus on a few services. 4 or 5 services are the most important ones, and that's what we are going to cover in the first few modules. Okay, now once we cover these modules, you should be in a position to start using AWS in your own projects. Especially, you should be able to set up proof of concepts. You should be able to set up a development environment, maybe a test environment. All right, so that'll be the objective of the first few modules. Okay, in module 6 and module 6 onwards, we'll talk about live environments, production environments more. For example, module 6 itself is a very important module where we'll talk about how do we create highly available, fault-tolerant, scalable stacks. Right, and fortunately, it's very easy to do those things with AWS, and we'll especially talk about load balancers, elastic load balancer, and what are called auto-scaling groups, which are groups of EC2 instances, which can be scaled very easily. Okay, all right, and then module 7 and 8, we'll look at a wider set of services, because as a solutions architect, you need to know enough about well, if not all, most of the AWS services. Okay, because as a solutions architect, you'll be architecting, you'll be designing, so you need to, you need to be able to pick the right service for the right problem. Okay, so it's important that you don't have to go too deep, but you should be aware of a wider set of services. Okay, so that's what we're trying to do in module 7 and 8. We'll cover 5 services in each module. So a total of 10 services will be covered in module 7 and 8. Okay, module 9, some more services, especially identity and access management, IAM. This is this is the authorization and authentication module of AWS. It's a very, very important service, especially for production environments. Okay, so that's what we'll cover in module 9. And finally, in module 10, we'll do a mock test. Okay, so this is for those who are interested in the certification exam. We'll do a very short mock test using official sample questions. Okay, and we'll also discuss the, I'll share some tips and strategies with you during this module, and we'll also have a lot of time for a general, an open session. We can review what we've done in the course. You may want me to cover some topics that we did not cover in the agenda, and any other question that you may have. Okay, so basically, module 10 is a mock test and an open Q&A session. Okay, so this is the plan, and of course, we'll talk more about these things as we go along. Okay, now a word about how we're going to do this course. So basically, so I am, my background is I'm not an academic, right? So I don't, I don't work at a college, and I'm also not a professional trainer as such, right? So I'm from the industry. My background is probably very similar to yours. Okay, so the courses, Edureka's courses are in general taught by people from the industry, which means the course is more practical, right? So more practical. It's more about skills. So that's an important aspect about this course. This is going to be a live session, as you can see, right? So I'm going to show you some slides. In general, I don't like to show slides. So I'm going to show you some slides, and then I'm going to show you a lot of demonstrations of various AWS services. Okay, and then we'll do a lot of Q&A. So we'll use a shared Google document. I'll show that to you very soon, and we'll sort of interact using that document. All right. Now the other thing is the session is recorded. Okay, so whatever you are seeing and hearing is recorded, and shortly after the module concludes, a video is uploaded into the learning management system. All right, so you must have received an email with the URL and your login credentials to the learning management system. Okay, and you should explore that. You should sort of log in and look at the course. in the learning management system, you'll also find various kinds of materials. For example, this presentation, you'll find that there, and you'll also find a video recording after each session, right? So if you miss a session, you can go back to that video recording. All right. We also have a project. So at the end of the course, you'll have to complete a project, and this is a kind of a hands-on, a small project, right? Not very complex, but what you have to do is set up an application on AWS, a highly available, fault-tolerant, scalable stack, right? So it's a bit of it's there is work to be done, right? And you'll be tested, and you'll work on some of the key services like EC2, RDS, also VPC, and you'll also set up the stack in multiple availability zones, right? So it sort of the project covers some of the key aspects of this course. Okay, so it's a good one, and once you complete that project, you can then you'll be issued the completion certificate, the course certificate from Edureka, right? So this certificate is different from the AWS certification exam, right? So this will be a course completion certificate issued to you by Edureka. All right. A few other points are that we'll be doing lots of demonstrations, right? So you can practice those once the class concludes, right? So in your own time, you should find enough time, maybe 5 or 6 hours per week, or rather now, since this is a weekday batch, right? Normally we do this course on weekends, right? So you have a lot of time during the week to practice. But this is an accelerated sort of schedule that we have, right? So you'll have to find some time outside of the class as well to practice. Okay, and when you're practicing, if you run into trouble, right, you might need some help. So you can contact Edureka. Okay, you can write to support@edureka.co and seek help that way. Okay, so the support team will help you, and if required, they'll get in touch with me if there's a question that they can't help you. All right. Okay. So this is how we'll do this. Now on the interaction, right? On the questions, like I said, it's based on experience. What I find is it's best that we keep the participants on mute. However, we'll have a lot of interaction, and what I like to do is use a shared document. All right. So this is a shared Google spreadsheet, and you can basically write your name and type your question, right? And then I'm going to respond to you. I'm going to explain the response, and then I'm also going to write a response. Okay. And what happens is, this way, this is better than using the webinar tool, because this way everybody can see all questions. Okay. So your question can be seen by everybody, and also over time, as we go through each module, this document becomes a good reference material. There's lots of questions, lots of answers, so you can refer to that to those later as well. Okay, so this is how we will do the interaction. All right. Now let me share this with you right away. So I'm going to give all of you edit access. Okay, so you can basically type your questions and also sometimes comments, right? So I welcome any comments you may have. So one of the participants may have a question, you may have an opinion on that, right? So feel free to comment as well. So this way we can do some interaction. You can have some interaction with your peers as well. Okay, so here's the link to the document. You can basically click on this and can basically click on this and see if you can enter the document. Okay, you should have edit access, so you'll be able to come into this document and type. All right, so I'm seeing that a lot of you have sent me messages on the webinar tool. I'm just seeing those. All right, and All right. So I think there's lots of questions about the course. So let's just wait for a bit. Okay, let's just wait for a bit. I'm going to talk to you about the course a bit more, and then I'll let you ask questions. So what I prefer is that you type your questions. All these questions that you've sent me, it'll be better if you type your questions in this sheet. Okay. And as I said, others will be able to see your questions, and we can have a better discussion. Okay. So just give me some time. Let me talk a bit more about the course, and then we'll stop. Okay, we'll spend a good amount of time on the course and on all these questions. All right. Okay. So now what I'm going to do next is I'm going to talk about, first of all, I'm going to do a very short introduction to cloud computing, because I think most of you will be familiar with cloud computing, but some of you may not. Okay, so we'll start with that. And then I'll also talk about the different certifications that are available with AWS, and also the solutions architect role, right? So we'll talk about that as well, because from experience, I've done many batches like this, and from experience, I find that many people have questions on, what is a solutions architect, what's a DevOps role, right? Which one is the right one for me? So we'll do a little bit of discussion on that. Okay, so let me just cover a few more slides, and then we'll stop and discuss the course. Okay, so let me start with a very brief explanation, just one slide of what cloud computing is. All right. So cloud computing, like it says here on the slide, is basically it enables ubiquitous, which means anytime, anywhere access. Very convenient, right? It's very convenient. With just a few clicks, you can get one server or 10 servers or 100 servers, right? So it's very, very convenient compared to what used to happen before the cloud, right? So before the cloud, for example, you would write a RFP, request for proposal. You would invite quotations from vendors, right? You would receive quotations. You would do a comparison. You would do negotiations, place an order. Right? Lots of things had to happen before you could get access to resources, right? But here it's very, very convenient. Just a few clicks, and you can have whatever computing resources you need. Okay, so anytime, anywhere access, very, very convenient on your fingertips, right? Also on demand, in the sense you get access to resources whenever you want, right? And right away. There's no waiting, and you don't have to talk to any vendor. You don't have to talk to an IT department, right? It's on demand. If you need a server, you get it right away, usually. Okay, so these are some of the key characteristics of cloud computing, and you should try and compare this to traditional purchases of servers and other types of equipment. Okay, so this is the access, right? So convenient on-demand access to what? To what? So to access to a shared pool, okay, a shared pool of computing resources like servers, storage, applications, and other types of services. Okay, so this shared pool idea is a very important idea to understand. For example, a good comparison would be Uber, right? You must have heard of Uber, which is the ride-sharing. It's like a cab. You can order a cab on your phone, right? So that's Uber. There are other companies as well in the same space, right? So the idea of Uber and these other companies is that why do you need to own a car, right? So that's their question, that you don't need to own a car, because if you own a car, most of the time it is idle, right? The car just sits in the garage or somewhere outside, right? And 99.5% of the time, or maybe 99% of the time, the car is sitting idle, right? And the cost is very high as well. You pay a lot of money upfront, right? A lot of people take loans, bank loans, to buy the car, and then also there's an ongoing cost as well. Insurance, maintenance, fuel, etc., etc., right? So and also the cost of driving, right? The stress of driving and things like that. So if you really think about it, and if you do a good comparison, right, then you'll find that the Uber model is actually better for most people, right? If you're a very, if you drive a lot, then maybe, you can still own a car. But for most people, the Uber model is better, because as long as, it works, So, you have an app, you call for a cab, and if it arrives at your doorstep in a reasonable amount of time, and if it does that all the time, right? at reasonable prices, then the Uber model is a better model, right? And that's why Uber is such a a big company, in the sense, it's the valuation of the company is very high, because everybody sees very high potential for this kind of model, right? So basically, what Uber is saying is, look, everybody need not own a car. We'll run a fleet of cars, and we'll share the cars with whoever needs it, right? So if you need a car, you just call for it, you use it for whatever time and distance you need to, right? And then you pay for that, only for the usage, right? And then you give back the car, and it goes back into the pool, and then is given out to someone else, right? So that's the Uber model. And why I'm telling you this is, the cloud computing model is the same thing, right? It's the same thing. So before cloud, people used to have their own server rooms, their own data centers, right? And there was a gradual evolution to some extent, right? People did use data centers which were shared, right? So lots of people could have their servers in a common data center. So those things were there, but in general, people tended to buy their own equipment, right? And it was like owning, every company had to have their own car, right? So it was like that. But cloud computing has basically centralized, right? They've basically created a very large shared pool of resources, right? And then you can rent. You can basically take a slice of those resources based on what you need, right? And when you don't need something, you can give it back, right? You can give it back, and you don't have to pay for what you're not using, right? So that's what cloud computing is. It's very similar to the Uber model, and of course, cloud computing was there before Uber as well, right? So that's what it is. Now, the other thing that's mentioned here is also very important: the minimal management effort, right? So what happens is, when you run your own data centers, or if you run your own server rooms, there's a lot of overhead. You need to manage the hardware, you need to manage the software, you need to do upgrades, you need to take care of security, right? Lots of things have to be done, and that's a very specialized kind of task, and it's what is called undifferentiated heavy lifting, right? So it doesn't add value to your business, it doesn't make you more competitive, okay, but you still have to do it. So that's another benefit of cloud computing, in that you completely outsource all that, right? All that effort of managing equipment to AWS, right? So that you can focus on your business, you can focus on your product. Okay, so this is what cloud computing is. Okay, you should learn. If you're committing to this, if you're learning this technology, you should not just learn the technology. You should also learn about the industry, right? So for example, what you have to know is, cloud computing, is a big industry, right? It's a big industry now, and it's only, it's not that old as an industry, right? Maybe you can say 10 years, right? 10 years old the industry is, but in those 10 years it has grown dramatically, right? And there are many different types of companies as well. Okay, so for example, AWS, Amazon Web Services, is a small part of the cloud computing industry, and AWS is famous or well known for the infrastructure space, right? So it gives you infrastructure, things like servers and storage, on a pay-as-you-go basis, right? And there are other types of companies as well. For example, Salesforce is a SaaS company, software as a service company, and those companies are also part of the cloud computing industry. All right, and you can see here on this slide, there are companies like Google and Azure. This is Microsoft Azure. These are companies which are competing, right? They're competing with AWS in the infrastructure space, and also maybe in the platform space. Okay, you can also see other companies like say VMware or OpenStack. These are especially, say, OpenStack is basically a product which is for, say, hybrid cloud, or what is called private cloud, where you may want to set up a cloud-like environment, but in your own data centers, right? So there are products and players in those kinds of spaces as well. All right. In terms of infrastructure, right? Infrastructure and AWS's position. What you have to know is AWS was a first mover. Okay, it moved. It started offering services sometime in 2005, and basically it's a part of AWS is part of the Amazon.com. It's the same company, right? It's not a separate company. It's part of Amazon.com. And Amazon, as you might know, was the pioneer of the e-commerce world, right? So they started out sometime in the late 90s with offering books, right? And then they went on to the other products, selling them online, right? And they became very successful, and they also had a very strong technology capability, right? And they also were handling internet scale volumes, right? So they were one of the first companies to see that kind of business, and whatever technology capabilities they built, the same capabilities now available as AWS, right? So they had a head start. They started early, and they had experiences which nobody else had, right? Which gave them the the capability of building something like AWS. Okay, so because they were the first mover, and also they have executed very well, right? So they have managed the business very well. They have grown very well, and they keep adding new services. They keep adding new features. They also keep reducing the prices, right? So they maintain that leadership very well, and that's why you see what you see on this slide, which is most people use AWS, right? And then there are, Microsoft has done well as well. Microsoft Azure is doing well, and then there are other players like Google and IBM there as well. But AWS is a very big player. It's clearly in the lead, and I recently heard that AWS's revenues are 10 times the revenues of all other major competitors combined. Okay, so that's the difference right now between AWS and the others. All right. Okay. So now let's talk about the certifications, right? With that little bit of intro to cloud computing and to AWS, let's talk about certifications, and then I'm going to stop. Okay, I'm going to stop and let you ask questions. Okay. So there are three paths, three tracks that are available. So there's the solutions architect track, there's a developer track, and there's an operations track as well, right? And there are two levels. So there's an associate level certification, and then there's a professional level certification. Okay, so if you're a solutions architect, if you want to be a solutions architect, then you will first go for the associate level certificate, solutions architect certificate, right? And then after some time, you can then pursue the professional level certificate, right? So you can't jump to the pro certificate. You have to go, you have to do the associate level certification first. Okay, and also if you're a developer, then it makes sense, obviously, to do not to do the solutions architect certification, but to do the developer certification, right? And then there's a professional certification, which is common. So the pro certificate is common. The DevOps professional certificate is common to developers and to SysOps or system administrator type of roles as well. Okay, so there's a SysOps associate level certificate, which leads to the DevOps professional certificate, and also the developer associate certificate leads to the same certificate. Okay, so these are three tracks and then two levels. In terms of expectations, what you should do is you have to have some experience with AWS. Okay, so if you have, say, 1 year, 1.5 years, or 2 years of experience using AWS, okay, then you are well placed to sort of attempt the associate level exam. All right, and also you should have good general IT experience. Okay, so any kind of IT experience, maybe a project manager, business analyst, a developer, system administrator, right? So you should have some IT experience. Otherwise it becomes difficult. Okay, otherwise it's kind of difficult to sort of do this exam right away. Okay, this I'm saying because I know many of you may be people who are just graduating out of college. Okay, and you want to pursue this certification. So I just want to set the expectations right. Okay, so you can do this course, but you should be prepared to wait, maybe get some more IT experience, and also get some more AWS experience before attempting this certificate. Okay, the other thing is the professional certificate needs even more experience. Okay, so once you get this level, right, once you become a associate level, once you have the associate certification, you should get some more AWS experience, maybe 18 months more or 2 years more before you attempt the professional level certification. Okay, so we're talking about, say, 1.5 to 2 years for the associate level, and then 1.5 to 2 more years for the professional level. Okay, so we're talking about 3 years to 5 years, 6 years total to achieve a professional certification. All right, this is the recommended time frame, right? And I'm just trying to set the expectations for you, right? You can do it faster if you're determined. You can do things, right? But this is what I would recommend. All right, now specifically about the solutions architect, right? So what is the role, right? What are the expectations from a solutions architect? And this is important to understand because the exam is based on this, right? So you'll be tested on your readiness to do things like this. So one of the major responsibilities of the solutions architect will be to design, right? Design, and yes, you have to play some part in the deployment as well, of a scalable, highly available, fault tolerant, and also cost efficient. Okay, cost efficient is mentioned. The cost is mentioned below, but also cost efficient systems on AWS. Okay, so this is the main objective, the main role of a solutions architect. All right, migrations of applications to the cloud is another important function. Okay, and migration is important because even though cloud computing now is well established, right? Lots of companies are using cloud computing, but it's also true that lots of companies in the world are still not using cloud computing, and they still need to move. They still need to migrate to the cloud, right? And migrations. So all this will play out over the next several years, right? Maybe a decade or even more as well, right? So migrations will remain an important topic till more companies in more industries move to the cloud, right? So that's why migration is important as well. And you might think migration is trivial, right? And it is in many cases, right? It's very simple to move one application from on-premises to the cloud, right? So it can be trivial, but in many cases it can be very, very complex as well. Okay, because it depends on the technology landscape that you have, and you have to sort of map what happens to each component, to each application, to the interdependencies, right? How do you move those to the cloud? So migrations can be very complicated, and that's why a solutions architect has a role to play in making that happen. Okay. All right. Next, you can also see this one here. You should be able to select the appropriate service, right? Appropriate AWS service based on the problem that you're solving, based on the need that your business has, right? So this is the reason you should know enough about the various AWS services that are available. Okay. Other things are best practices, right? You have to know the best practices because sometimes you will understand the services, but then when it comes to implementation, right, you can do things in suboptimal ways, right? So it's important that you keep abreast of the best practices, and the best way to do this is to read white papers, to attend events, right, and be in touch with the community essentially. Okay. And finally, cost. So cost, by the way, cloud computing is basically a pay-as-you-go type of offering, right? So it's like your mobile phone bill or your electricity bill. So the more you use, the more you pay, right? And also it depends on what you use, right? So in a mobile phone bill, you'll have different, you'll have an itemized billing, and you'll have different heads for, say, SMSs, roaming costs, phone calls, and so on, right? Data usage as well. So in the same way, in the cloud, you have pay-as-you-go pricing, you get a monthly bill based on what how much you've used and what kinds of resources you have used, right? So so this pay-as-you-go model is very different from the traditional model where people used to buy hardware by paying upfront, right? So you had to pay lots of thousands of dollars upfront for purchasing equipment, right? And but now it's totally different, right? So you have pay-as-you-go pricing, and the implication of this is that in the earlier model, your procurement team or your accounting team or your finance team could handle the payments and the interaction with the vendor, right? But here, those same people, the finance team or the procurement team, has no role. Okay, they have no role because there's no negotiation, there's no upfront cost, right? The bill depends on your decisions, right? And not just your design decisions, but also decisions on an ongoing basis, right? So what is happening in the cloud is the cost decisions, right, has now become part of your responsibility, right? So cost management becomes the responsibility of the technology folks, and moves away from procurement and finance and those kinds of people. Okay, so that's another important function of a solutions architect. All right, okay, folks. So let me stop here. All right, let me stop here. And let's I'm sure you have lots of questions, and this looks like a pretty big group. Okay, this looks like a very large group, so I think there'll be lots of questions, and let's discuss these, right? So many of you have sent me messages on the webinar panel, right? So I request that you write your question here in this document so that others can see your question, and I'm also going to write a response, so this is better. All right, so let me go through these questions one by one. Okay, this one, Sarvanan, the course, does it cover the latest services which AWS has introduced? No, not so much. Okay, not so much. So the course's objectives is to teach you AWS as a whole, right? So we're not going to focus on the new services because they're very new, right? And they're not core as well, right? So there are many other services which are more important than some of the services which have been introduced recently. Okay, so not so much. The objective is the solutions architect exam, right? And the solutions architect role. Okay, so not so much the new services. Okay, Jagdish, can you can you share the LMS details to my email? I haven't received one. So you should write to support. Just write to support at edureka.co. Okay, or contact whoever you were dealing with when you signed up, right? Okay, so when you signed up, all right. So because I'm an instructor, right? So the support teams and the LMS administrators are different. Okay, so it's best that you write to them so that they know that they have to contact you directly. All right. Okay. Babita, what is DevOps? Is it installation and administration? Yeah, DevOps is is a sort of a big subject, and basically it's things like automation, right, of deployments, also things like continuous integration, continuous deployment, these kinds of things, right? So the background to all this is, in the olden days we used to have a slow delivery model, right? We used to have this waterfall model where any software changes were done very slowly, right? So say you'd have a major release once every year or twice every year, right? And that was not good enough from a business perspective, right? So businesses need agility, they need things faster, right? And more recently we moved to sort of philosophies like agile, right? Agile development, where you do things much faster, and also you want to deploy those new changes and bug fixes very fast, right? So there's a need for doing things faster in an automated fashion, right? So handling all that, managing all that is what DevOps is. Okay, so it's a big topic, It's not just installation or administration. Okay, it is, although it includes installation and administration, right? It's a big topic. It's a philosophy, right? There are lots of tools, and the whole thing is called DevOps. Okay, so that's what that is. Chandra, we have Azure and infrastructure as a service and Azure platform as a service. We have something like this for AWS also, or only infrastructure? Yeah, we do have. So AWS now, it started out as an infrastructure provider mainly. Okay, so started as an IaaS provider, but now is expanding or has expanded, okay, to platforms as well. Okay, so we'll talk about this. And by the way, AWS is in the lead, right? So they move at a very, very rapid pace, and they keep adding new things all the time, right? And lots of platform like services have been added. Okay, so AWS is far ahead of Azure. So anything Azure has, it's probably likely that AWS already has that. All right, Sarvanan, what about security in cloud computing? I heard last year hackers hacked 80,000 AWS user accounts. How Amazon recovered? I didn't hear this. Okay, let me know what your source is. What is the source of this? Okay, if you can provide me some kind of URL, that will be interesting. Yeah, so without a source, let me not comment on this, because I'm surprised by this. Okay, I haven't heard of this type of attack. All right, I'm very, very surprised by this actually. So let me know what your source is. We can then come back and discuss this. All right, because why I'm saying this is AWS has very strong security practices. Okay, it has lots of security certifications, and I haven't heard of this kind of attack, right? And I'll be surprised if it is true. Okay, Shyam, experienced person also need to wait 1 year for the certification? No, look, the point is that you don't have to wait. It's not mandatory that you have to wait. Okay, but without experience on AWS, right? You have to use AWS a bit, right? You can't attend a course or read about AWS and do the exam. Okay, so without experience on AWS, you will find the exam too hard. All right, that's the point. So you need to use AWS a bit. Okay, that's the point. You don't have to wait. Nobody's saying you have to wait, right? You can do it right away. You can do it tomorrow, but you must get experience. Then it becomes much simpler. Okay, Subani, can I expect managing AWS using Python or Ansible in this course? No, not really, not really. Okay, and why? I mean, look, AWS is a much, it's a big topic, right? And here in this course we're talking about solutions architect, the solutions architect role, right? And what other things that a solutions architect needs to know. Okay, so Python or Ansible sounds more like DevOps, right? And why Python, right? There are many other programming platforms as well, right? So if you're looking for something very, very specific, then like this, right? Then no, this course is not about only these things, right? So we are mainly looking at the solutions architect role and exam, right? And there are many topics to cover. Okay, including some DevOps deployment options, some provisioning options. Okay, and we are not really focusing on specific programming languages or specific tools like Ansible too much. Okay, the focus is on AWS and the AWS services that are available. Okay, so yeah, Shyam, I missed, what is the LMS? How do we access the current recordings? So LMS is a learning management system. Okay, LMS is the learning management system. So you should have received an email. I'm surprised that you haven't. So so it's something like this. Let me show you what it looks like. Yeah, it looks like this. Okay, it looks like this. So so you'll find something like this. You'll find a course like this. This is the course. Okay, and you'll find the course content. So for example, the presentation that you're seeing right now, you'll find it here. There's also other stuff like quiz and some practice activities. All right, so all these things are available here. And also, once the recording is uploaded, the recording also you'll find under the respective module. All right. Okay, so you should have received an email with the URL as well as the credentials for something like this. Okay, if not, you can contact your contact at Edureka and let them know. Okay, all right. Arun, how about the partnership with VMware AWS? What is the scope? Yeah, so this was announced recently, right? So this was recently announced at an event in late 2016. So there was some kind of partnership announced, and basically, what I understood from that, I've not gone deeper into this, but what I understood from that is VMware customers will be able to use AWS more easily. Okay, that's at a high level what I understood. Okay, but I think you'll easily find more information about this. Okay, just do a Google and you should find more information about the partnership and what exactly the scope is. Okay, Jagdish, do we have labs or do we need to try on our own with our own account? Your own account, okay, your own account, because otherwise it becomes hard to sort of track all this and keep a limit on the amount used and all that. So it's best that you have your own account. Okay. I mean, you have to have your own account. And also remember, AWS offers something called the free tier. Okay, the free tier, which means you get lots of free resources, which is enough for learning AWS, right? And also the free tier is for 1 year. Okay, 1 year from the date of creating the account. So for 1 year, you have lots of resources free of cost. So so there's no need for Edureka to give you an account or anything like that, right? You should set up your own account. You have to set up your own account because you have to practice, and that's how you will learn, right? If you use somebody else's account, you're not going to, it's not going to be as good. Okay, so you should do it on your own. All right, Shyam, is free tier for 1 year for 750 instance hours. No, it's complicated, more complicated than that. Okay, so 750 hours per month. Okay, for EC2 instances. Now there are many other types of resources. Okay, so the 750 hours is only for EC2 instances, right, and other types of instances. But 750 hours per month for EC2 instances, and so it becomes 750 hours per month for 12 months. Okay, that's only EC2. Now the free tier is also for other services. Okay, Subhani, can you cover DevOps tools in AWS like code deploy, code commit? Yeah, we can talk about it. Look, in module 10, it's an open session, right? So we can cover some topics like this depending on other questions as well. Okay, but the focus of this course is not on DevOps. All right, so therefore we're not really covering code deploy, code commit, etc. Okay, so focus of this course is not on DevOps. So code commit, code deploy is not part of the agenda, right? I'm telling you all this because I just want to make sure that the expectations are right, and you do a course only if you think it's a good fit. Okay, I don't want to waste your time or money, so you have to. So that's why I'm telling you all these things. So we're not really covering DevOps and code commit and code deploy, etc. Okay. However, let me also tell you this, that it's more important to if you're aware of AWS, if you know EC2, if you know RDS, then you can move on to these topics, right? And these topics are easy to learn. Okay, they're not too complicated, but first you should understand cloud computing and AWS first, right? And then it's very simple. These are very simple services. You won't need too much time to pick up these topics. All right, Arun, can we continue using our old account, or will we start from scratch creating a new one? No, that's up to you. Up to you. Okay, that's up to you. So I'm not concerned about that. So I'm just going to show you. I'm going to talk about explain the various services, and I'm going to show you demonstrations. Right? It's up to you how you want to practice. You can use your own old account, right? But if you want to take advantage of the free tier, right? An old account may not have the free tier, right? It may be older than 1 year. So that you can decide, right? So up to you. But free tier is available only for 1 year from date of account opening. Okay, so you may not have free tier, so that's a disadvantage. Maybe it makes sense to create a new one. Okay, so this is the source, right? So this is Kindle. This seems to be Kindle. It's not. Anyway. Let's take a look at this. This is different. It sounds different. It's Amazon.com, right? It's not AWS. So. Um, yeah, I don't know. Uh, So, look, it's all dubious, right? It sounds very dubious. So hacker claims to have done something, and I don't know. I don't think this is serious, right? I don't think this is serious. Okay, but also please remember this is Amazon.com, right? This is not AWS. So I don't think this is serious. There are lots of claims and counterclaims and fake news and stuff like that, right? So this is not. I don't think this is serious. Okay. Also, this sounds like Kindle, which is totally different, right? Not AWS. Okay, so AWS, by the way, it's. Let me just show you something on the security side. So AWS has a very good track record, okay, and they have executed really well. That's why they're growing so fast, right? If there was a serious issue like this, then the market would not trust them, right? But that's not the case. So take a look at this page here. This is the compliance center, and you can see their practices and their certifications. Things like ISO 27001, PCI. This is the credit card industry standards for credit card information, and so on. Okay, so lots of compliance certifications. Look at this one, right? So you have ISO 9000, 27000, and so on. You have a PCI DSS. You have SOC certifications. Then on the Europe side, lots of European Data Protection Directive, Australia, New Zealand, right? So lots of certifications and compliance. Okay, and let me tell you, it's very solid, right? They have very strong practices. They have very strong track record, and it's very, very solid. Okay, so if you're concerned about security, right? I'm not saying security is not a concern, right? I'm not saying security is not a concern, but AWS's practices will be much superior to whatever you may currently have, right? So it's not like AWS will never get hacked, right? I'm not claiming that, but can you do things as well as AWS? I don't think so, right? For most companies in the world, they cannot have security practices as sound as what AWS can have. All right, so that's how you have to think about this. So this is, take a look at this compliance page, number one, and number two, can you have, right? Can you, right, especially as a small and medium company, have security practices as strong as AWS? No, right? No. The answer is no for most people. No for 99.99% of companies out there, right? So because these things require a lot of capital, a lot of investment. So I don't think you should be too concerned about it. Okay. All right. So we also, let me quickly answer these questions. We have to keep an eye on the time as well. Okay. So let me quickly answer some of these questions. If I'm not able to answer all questions, I'll answer them later, right, off class. Okay, Valen, can I run Con from my machine in 1 year? I'm not sure what this is, right? So you can just rephrase this, just explain this better, and then I'll come back to this question. Sarvanan, will you be covering any exam question answer from exam perspective? Yeah, so we'll do a mock test. Okay, we'll do a mock test in module 10. the last session, we'll cover the mock test, and I'll give you some tips and strategies and stuff like that. So we'll discuss each question in the mock test, and we'll use official AWS questions. Okay, so we'll do that. Virendra, expecting support on production issues if possible during lab practice. No. So that's not possible. Okay, this is not. This course is not for production issues. Okay, because why? Because it takes up too much time. We can't do that during class. Okay, and also it's not it's not fair. Okay, plain and simple, it's not fair. We can't cover production issues. We can easily talk about the topics at hand, right, and the assignments and quizzes that we do. Okay, but not production issues, because we will not have, Edureka will not have the expertise, they'll not have the resources to do things like that. Okay, so this won't be possible. All right, Shyam, when we try to do hands-on exercises explained in these sessions but face issues, how is it going to be resolved? Should we contact someone? Yeah, so for that you can contact support. Okay, so there is support available for those kinds of things. You should write to them, not to me. Okay, and they will help you out. If they can't help you out, then they will get in touch with me. Okay, all right. So that's fine. That's fine. That's definitely available as part of this course. Okay, Jagdish, do we have a lab kit or the lab manual to practice in an order? No. So yeah. So in the LMS, you will find lab step-by-step lab activities. Okay, but sometimes what happens is I like to do things of my own, right? The LMS has content which is sort of generic content for all instructors, and then as an instructor I have some prerogative, right? I can do something of my own, so those things may not be available, but in general there are step-by-step guides available in the LMS, right? And if I'm doing something which is different, then you can look at it in the video. Okay, you can go back to the video and take a look. All right. Okay, folks. So let me now proceed. Right. Let me now proceed with the rest of the agenda. Okay, I'm also seeing some questions here from Shashi. Shashi, if you can write your questions in the Google document, that'll be better. Okay, so you might have joined late. Let me share the Google document with you so that you can type your questions in the document. All right. Okay, folks. So now, next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce you to AWS. Okay, so we'll look at AWS, what it is, what are the various services that are available. Let's get a little bit of idea about AWS. Okay, and then we will start with the agenda for Module 1, which is things like what is the AWS infrastructure, and we'll also touch upon how to sort of choose the region in which you should set up your AWS infrastructure, and we'll also start talking about EC2 instances. Okay, but first let's talk about AWS. Right? Let's get a little bit familiar with AWS. Okay, so AWS, as you can see here, right? You should focus more on the boxes in the middle, right? And you can see various categories. The boxes have categories of services. So you have say compute on the top, right? And then you have storage as a category, right? And each category has multiple services. All right, and just by looking at the names, compute and storage, you can understand these are infrastructure services, right? So infrastructure is basically low-level hardware type of services, right? So if you need a server, right, that would be an infrastructure service. If you need some storage, if you want to store some old archives, some log files, some database backups, right? So then that would be a infrastructure service. Okay, so AWS started out as an infrastructure as a service provider, right, with services in the compute space, in the storage space. Okay, also networking would be infrastructure type of services. All right, but then after some time they also started moving into platforms. So remember, AWS has, there's nothing which says that AWS should stick to infrastructure, right? So they will go into more spaces. They are following the same strategy as Amazon.com, where they started with books initially, then they expanded to electronics, then they went into other areas as well, right? And now they also can fix a tap in your home, right? So they're also getting into services of that kind. They're also getting into grocery delivery as well. So the same strategy that Amazon has, AWS has as well. So they started as infrastructure providers, but they will go into platforms, and they have gone into platforms. They will go into software as well, software as a service as well, right? And then they'll go into any other space that they think they can help you with, right? So they will probably want to become the one-stop shop for all your technology needs. Okay, so that's my sense. That's my opinion, and that's because it's the same strategy as Amazon.com. Okay, so what you have to see from this slide is yes, they started out as infrastructure providers with services in the compute space, storage space, networking space, right? But then they've gone into platforms, for example, databases, right? So databases like RDS. RDS is a relational database service. Okay, and here you can run Oracle, Microsoft SQL Server, MySQL databases. All those things can be run here, right? And but RDS is more like a platform. Okay, you can also run Oracle databases on EC2 instances, which are basically VMs. They're basically virtual machines, right? So, but what RDS does is it goes beyond plain regular infrastructure. It also does things like automated backups. It can do replication. It can do automated failovers. It can do point-in-time recovery. It can create read replicas, right? So it goes beyond infrastructure, right? Beyond a plain server, a plain vanilla server, and it does many more things. Okay, so that's why it's a platform. All right, so that's why you can see, initially there's compute, storage, networking, which is infrastructure, but now there's databases, which is platform. Okay, and so on, and this slide is actually a bit dated, and there are many more services now available as part of AWS in spaces such as artificial intelligence, analytics, mobile, and gaming, and also there are software services like email, productivity tools, and so on. Okay, so there are many more categories in addition to the basic ones, the core ones that are listed here. Okay, so that's I hope you're beginning to get some sense of what AWS is. All right. Okay, now let's touch upon the various categories to a little bit, little extent. So a compute category, right? It's a category of services, and there's a bunch of services under compute. So the main one is EC2. This is Elastic Cloud Compute, right? And here you can get virtual machines, right? And of various sizes. So you may want a small server, you can get that. You may want a very large server, you can get that, right? And everything in the middle. You may want one server or 100 servers or 1,000 servers, right? You can get that. Just a few clicks is all you need. Okay, so that's what EC2 is. Okay, there's also Lambda. Lambda is a new service. EC2 is an old one, but Lambda is a very new service. And here, the idea of Lambda is to have serverless computing. Right? So you don't have servers. You don't have a Linux server or a Windows server, right? You don't care about all that. You simply upload your code, right? And you can run your programs on Lambda without servers. Okay, without servers. The idea being that server management is a pain, right? If you don't have servers, that's great, right? That's the idea. And also Lambda can be used to create things like microservices, right? So microservices is a new idea that is emerging, that is becoming popular, and Lambda can help you with that. Okay, this is a very interesting new service, very interesting service in the compute space. But the workhorse is EC2, right? So most people will use EC2. They do use EC2, right? That's why we learn this first. EC2 is very easy to learn because it's basically virtual machines, which most of you will be familiar with already, right? So it's nothing great. There's no big technology leap here, right? These are basically plain vanilla virtual machines. You can create them as many as you want, and then you connect to them via SSH or RDP, right? And then you do what you do with any other server. Okay, so EC2 is the same stuff from before, but then you have other things which are improvements over what we had before. Lambda being one. Auto scaling is another one, where you can create a group of EC2 instances which can scale automatically, right? So if the load is high, the auto scaling group will add new servers automatically, okay? And if the load is less, it will remove servers automatically so that your cost comes down. Okay, so stuff like this is possible. You also have load balancers. If you use multiple servers in any tier, right? If you have multiple web servers or multiple application servers, you need a load balancer. So it's very easy to create components like load balancers also. Okay, so this is the compute category. This is especially EC2, right? We learn EC2 first. Okay, then we have storage and also databases. So storage is also important. You know, you along with compute, along with servers, storage, right? Everybody needs servers and storage. So you can't have any application without these two types of equipment, right? So we've discussed servers in the compute category. In the storage category, you have a bunch of services. And these services are suited for different types of needs. For example, EBS, okay, Elastic Block Store. This is very much like a hard disk. Okay, so it's like a hard disk type of storage, but much better. And you basically use EBS with EC2 instances. Okay, so this is something we'll have to learn. Then we'll also talk about S3, simple storage service. This is centralized storage, right? Over HTTP. You basically can store anything. Okay, any kind of file, any kind of object can be stored. You can store as many objects as you want. There's no limit. Okay, it's truly infinite storage. Okay, infinitely scalable storage. That's what S3 is. And also it's highly durable, which means it has a SLA of 11 nines. Okay, 11 nines percent, which means 99.99%, right? Which means if you store something in S3, it will never get lost. Okay, so highly durable, highly scalable, very cheap, extremely cheap storage this is what S3 is, right? So very interesting. So S3 is a true cloud-like service. EBS is something more traditional, more like a hard disk. Okay, and then there are other options as well. We'll talk about these. Okay, in the database category, we have 4 services. Okay, RDS is your traditional relational databases like Oracle. Okay, but it's RDS does lots of value-added things for you. Things like automated backups, replication, failover, etc. So you don't need. It's very simple, right? It's very simple to use databases with RDS because a lot of stuff that you would be concerned about, that you would need expertise for, those things are no longer required because they are fully automated. Okay, so RDS does those things for you. You don't have to do it yourself, and therefore you can simply focus on your application, right? And it becomes very simple to run databases in the cloud. All right. Now, along with RDS, there are other options as well. And the point here is that on the cloud, it's very simple to run databases. Okay, you don't need the same level of expertise, the same level of effort you would need outside of cloud, right? So DBAs and lots of time going into all this, all that is not required because it's simple, right? You just click a few buttons, you get a database, right? You don't have to patch it, you don't have to maintain it, you don't have to scale it too much, right? So all those things are taken care of for you. So in the cloud, it's possible to use different types of database technologies, right? So one application can have multiple database types. Okay, so all this is possible on the cloud, right? We'll talk about this more. Okay, there's also other types of services. For example, in the networking side, right, you have VPC, virtual private cloud. So this is like a isolated network on the cloud. So VPC is not connected to the internet, so it is safer. Okay, it is safer from attacks. So that's what it is. It's a very important service, a VPC. So we'll discuss this more. There's also Route 53, which is a DNS service. Okay, it's a DNS service, and it does basic DNS activities like mapping your domain to an IP address. Right, it does that, but it also has advanced routing, things like latency-based routing, geolocation-based routing, DNS failover, weighted round robin. Those kinds of routing is also possible using Route 53. All right. Okay. Also, management tools. Right. Management tools are tools which help you use AWS better. Right. So if they're not as important as other services, right? Because they're just management tools. But what you have to understand is, without management tools, you would not be able to make the best use of AWS, right? So in that sense, they're very important. And you have many different types of tools. For example, CloudWatch is a monitoring tool. Monitoring, right? It looks at your resources, it tracks, it collects data about your resources, things like CPU, so that you know what is the CPU utilization of a single server, what is the CPU utilization of a group of servers, right? And if the CPU is too high, you can get notified, so stuff like that. Okay, so there are many management tools, and they're all very important so that you can effectively use AWS. All right, okay. So I hope this gives you a sense, right? I hope this gives you a sense of what AWS is. There are many other services, many other categories as well, but we'll talk about those as we go along in this course. All right, okay. So now let's talk about module 1. All right, so now we're getting into module 1, and after this introduction, right? And the agenda in this module is to first of all talk about the global infrastructure, right? So these are AWS data centers, the different types of equipment and locations that they have, right? It's very important to understand this, because when you set up your applications and your stacks, you do it on the global infrastructure, and you need to know how to choose, right? How to choose where to keep your stacks, right? So that's the next topic. So we'll see how to choose the regions as well. All right. So this is the infrastructure side, and then we'll start talking about EC2. Okay, so we'll focus on EC2, especially the implementation of EC2. How do we launch instances? How do we connect? How do we set up applications on EC2 instances? Those things are coming up in module 2, right, starting tomorrow. But before that, we'll get introduced to EC2 in this module. Okay, so we'll talk about what is a EC2 instance, what are the different instance types that are available, and also how do we buy EC2 instances. Okay, this is very important because most of your bill, right, when you start using AWS seriously in your company, the biggest component of your bill is going to be EC2 instances, right? And there are many ways of saving on the cost. So we need to understand how to purchase EC2 instances very well, because this will directly save you money, right, on the bill. So that's an important topic as well. Okay, so this is the agenda. So infrastructure, the global infrastructure. How do we pick? How do we use the infrastructure? How do we pick the right region for our stacks? Okay, that's one. And then secondly, we'll talk about EC2, the various instance types, and also how to purchase that. Okay, this is the agenda. All right. Okay. So again, Shashi, if you can just write your questions in the sheet. Okay. If you can write your questions in the sheet, that'll be good, because I'm not looking at these questions all the time, right? I've just noticed that you have another question about video streaming. So if you can just add that in the shared document, this one here, right? I'll cover your question at some point. Yeah. Okay. So you've done that. Fine. Okay, all right. Okay, folks. So now let's talk about the infrastructure, right? We'll look at those questions at an appropriate time. But now let's talk about the infrastructure first. All right. So the infrastructure, right? AWS, as you know, started out as an infrastructure provider, and then they're building many services, platforms, and application services, and many other things on top of the same infrastructure, right? So it's important to understand the layer, right? The infrastructure layer that everything else is built on. Okay. So what you have to understand is mainly two things. One is regions, and the other is availability zones. Okay, regions and availability zones. So a region is a large data center. All right, it's a large data center, very large data center. They do things at a very large scale. Okay, so think of a region as a very large data center in a certain location in the world, right? So you have regions in many places. For example, you have one in the U.S. East Coast in North Virginia. You have one in the U.S. West Coast, in somewhere in California, right? You have one in Dublin. You have one in Frankfurt in Germany, and in Asia as well. You have one in Tokyo, Singapore. There's one in Mumbai, which was launched recently in India, right? There are a couple in China, Australia, Brazil, right? So there are different locations. And in each location, there's one region, which is a very large data center. Okay, that's number one. And number two, one region consists of at least two availability zones. Okay, at least two availability zones. So the larger regions may have more; they may have 4 or 5, and the smaller regions will have 2 availability zones. Okay, so what is an availability zone? The availability zone, or in short, AZ. Okay, this is something you should get familiar with because you'll find this used in many places in documentation and videos that you might find elsewhere. Right. So AZ is availability zone. So what is an AZ? So an AZ is like a sub data center. Right. It's a smaller. It's a part of the region. Right. A smaller part of the region, and each AZ is independent of the other AZs. Okay, and what I mean by that is each AZ will have its own power supply, its own internet connection, and so on, right? We don't have full information. What we know is power supply is different, is independent, internet connection is independent. Maybe there's some physical difference, physical security maybe different, and so on, right? And they're independent of each other, right? And why? Because what they're trying to do is, if there's a problem, let's say there's a power supply problem, right? So that power supply problem will affect only one AZ, right? It will affect only one AZ in the region, and the other AZ or AZs will continue to function normally. Okay, so that's what the AZ does, and what that means for you is that you have to pick a region, right? You have to pick a region based on network latency, legal considerations, and all that. But once you pick a region, your servers, especially your live environments, your servers should run in multiple AZs. Okay, so if you use multiple AZs, you will get fault tolerance, you will get high availability. Okay, that's what AZs are for. All right, that's it. These are the two most important things you must understand first. Okay, now here's a map, right? Here's a map of the regions that are present in the world, right? So you can see, they first started out in the US naturally, right, and then also in Europe. These are the biggest economies today, right, and also Japan, Tokyo, Singapore, and recently they have added regions in India. Also China, I think, is an important market as well. So basically, the regions are available in the bigger economies, right? So the Western world initially, these are the biggest economies, and also now the emerging economies, right? So China, India, and also some of the other locations. Okay. So normally you'll pick a region. Okay, you'll pick a region. Normally, what you will do is you'll pick a region which is in your country, if possible. Okay, because your users are in this country. Your region should be ideally close to where your users are. This is for network latency purposes, right? And also there might be some legal considerations. For example, in the banking world, your banking regulator may say that you must not store data outside the country, right? So those are factors that you have to take into account before selecting a region, right? But within a region, you must always use multiple availability zones, especially for your live environments. Okay, now there's one more thing that you must be aware of, and these are called edge locations. Okay, edge locations. So you can see on this map there are blue dots, right? You can see the blue dots on this map, and the blue dots are smaller, maybe data centers. Let's call them data centers, but they're very small, right? As compared to the regions. Regions are very large. The edge locations are very small, probably, right? But the number of edge locations is much larger than the number of regions. Okay, and the edge locations collectively form what is called a content distribution network, CDN, content distribution network. All right, and a CDN is basically used to serve content such as video files. Okay, video files. You can serve video faster using a content distribution network. Okay, so the edge locations are basically caching servers. You know, the servers are cache servers. The video is cached on the edge location, right? And if there's a user near that edge location who wants to watch that video, the user will be served from the edge location rather than from the region in which the video is the source is, right? So this way you can serve things like video, audio, CSS files, image files faster if you use a content distribution network. Okay, so using a CDN is not mandatory, but it's a service. There is this infrastructure that is available, and depending on your use case, you can use the CDN along with other components in your stack. Okay, so we'll talk about all that. But at this moment, what you have to understand is, along with the regions and the availability zones within the regions, right, separately, there's a larger number of edge locations spread throughout the world. Okay, you'll find that the edge locations are mainly in the major cities of the world, right? So the bigger population centers are usually cities, and also, you know, wherever internet consumption is high. Okay, so mostly, again, in the Western world and some of the emerging economies, that's where you'll find the edge locations, right? And they'll be placed close to or in the major cities of the world, right? Because their job is to serve content faster, right? And most of the users are in the major cities. Okay, that's the infrastructure. All right. Okay. So maybe I should stop here, right? Let me stop here. Let's do a little more discussion. Okay. Let's do a little more discussion, and especially if you have any questions on AWS services, the global infrastructure, regions, availability zones, edge locations, right? These things are very important concepts. So if you have any questions on these, please let me know. All right. Okay. So let me try and answer some of these questions. All right. So I'm going to pick a few questions which are more relevant. Okay, which are more relevant to the topics we've covered. So Lambda is it like a Docker, right? Lambda, is it like Docker? You can say yes, it is similar, right? It is similar. It is similar. It is similar. You can say that. You can say that in the sense that you can run a small program, right? You can run a small service, a microservice in Lambda, just like you can run a small service in Docker. Okay, so it is similar in the sense that you can use either for running a small service, right, or a component. Okay, so in that sense, it is similar. But Lambda is proprietary, right? Lambda is proprietary, and like Arun says here, right? Docker is open source, right? Docker is open source. Lambda is proprietary to AWS. Okay, but conceptually, you can say there are similarities. Okay, Babita. Okay, this question here, Shashi. If I have to make a configuration with a hit of 1 lakh users, which instance and how much hard disk I'm supposed to take? Any general answer for it? Well, the general answer is 1 lakh users, right? You mainly need to worry about the memory, right? Memory is usually the bottleneck. Okay, memory is usually the bottleneck, and not hard disk. Okay, nothing to do with the hard disk. It doesn't matter what your hard disk is, right? But usually memory is where you'll run into trouble. Okay, also you need to know the concurrent users. Okay, now it doesn't matter how many users you have. It matters how many concurrent users you have. Okay, so let's say one concurrent user takes up 1 MB, right? So you need concurrent users into 1 MB should be the RAM on the server. All right, that's the general answer. That's like a simple way in which you can approach this. But remember, in the cloud, we don't talk about server sizes. Okay, we don't talk about how big the server should be. Okay, because we normally will use an auto scaling group or something like that. So we'll have more servers, right? The server size need not be big. Servers usually should be, we normally use small servers. Okay, the server should be as small as possible, but you should use as many servers as required. Okay, so we don't talk about how big the server should be. The server should be small. And we use more servers to handle the load. Okay, and the server size the number of servers can change automatically based on load, right? So the planning and all that, the capacity planning that we used to do in the past is not that important in the cloud. All right, Babita, what do you mean by serverless? How does my code work? Yeah, how does my code work? Yeah, so basically what you do is Lambda is not for monolithic applications, right? So it's not for, say, PHP or Java. It's not for n-tier applications. Okay, it is for small functions at the moment, and you simply upload the code into Lambda. It's not a IDE, it's not a development environment. Okay, you simply upload the code into Lambda. For example, let's say you have a function which sends an SMS, right? So the code for sending the SMS is put into Lambda. You create a function, a Lambda function, and then you can invoke the Lambda function like a web service call or something like that. Okay, so you upload the code into Lambda. The Lambda function can be invoked via multiple ways, but via a web service call, for example, right? And that's how it runs. Okay, it's not for like PHP applications, the traditional PHP application, Java applications. It's not for that. It's not for that. It's for a small piece of code that you can upload directly. All right. Okay. Yeah. So Arun, these are comments for Shyam and Shashi, right? So thanks for that, right? This is good, right? So this is good. You should share any ideas that you have with each other as well. Okay, Shashi, video streaming also stored in S3 buckets. Yeah. So the videos are stored. Video is stored in S3 normally, right? So you can store the video in S3, and then you can stream it via multiple ways. You can use CloudFront. CloudFront is the CDN, okay, the CDN, content distribution network, using the edge locations, right? So CF can sit in front of S3 to serve video. All right, so this is how you can do it. We'll talk about this. It's a little bit early to talk about these things. Okay, Sandeep, how are AZs contributing to high availability and fault tolerance? Is it creating a replica? Yeah, so replica for databases. Replica for databases, right? Yes. So replica is for databases. That's one way in which it creates fault tolerance and high availability. Okay, for other tiers, for example, web tiers, web tier, there is no need. There's no need for replication. right? Because you just have multiple servers, and you have some servers running in one zone, other servers running in another zone. So for web tier, there is no need for replication, right? You have multiple servers running in multiple AZs, okay, behind a load balancer, right? So if one AZ goes down, the servers in the other AZ keep running, right? So that's how you get uh, fault tolerance and high availability. Okay, all right. Subhani, I'm a bit confused about edge locations. Yeah, so edge locations are cache servers, right? So these are edge locations contain cache servers, right? And what is cached? So video, audio, images, etc. Right? So they are cached in the edge location. Why do we need to cache them? Because if the video, if the user and the server are far away from each other, okay, if they are far away, then network latency, okay, so the greater the network distance, right, the slower the download of the video file, okay, then network latency may be too high. This is the problem that the edge location solves, right? So with an edge location, the video can be served from a server which is close to the user, to the particular user. Okay, that's basically it. That's basically it. So it's a network of caching servers used to speed up the delivery of things like video files. Okay, how is the CDN configured? Do we specifically configure it, or AWS does it for us? How is it charged? Yeah, there are various charges. Charges are network charges and things like that. So you can look this up, right? You can look up the pricing of CloudFront. The service is called CloudFront, right? Look up the pricing. I don't remember it offhand, but basically it'll be things like how much it's based on how much you use, it. So there'll be some flat pricing. Then there'll be some pricing based on how much data is transferred. Right, how much data is transferred via the CloudFront distribution. Okay, and configuration, you have some control, right? It depends on what you mean by configuration, but configuration you have control. You can set up things like things like TTL, right? Time to live. How much time the cached object should be saved in the cache before it is refreshed. So those kinds of things you can control, right? But there are many. It really depends on specifically what you're trying to configure. I don't know. Some of those things may not be available as options for you, right? Those things may be AWS does it automatically. But we'll discuss this, right? You can look up the CloudFront documentation, and if you have anything specific, we can discuss it later. All right, okay, folks. So now, okay, so now let's talk about some of the benefits of this global infrastructure, right? And going back to some of your questions, one of you asked, how does multiple AZs, how do multiple AZs give us fault tolerance, right? So those kind of questions let's discuss. Okay, so what are the benefits, right? We've understood the global infrastructure. We've talked about regions, availability zones, and edge locations, right? Now, why is this such a big deal, right? How does it help us? How is it better than what we have today? Maybe our own data center, maybe our own server room. How is it better, right? So let's try and answer this. Okay, so we'll talk about four things. HA, high availability, continuity, which is business continuity, things like disaster recovery, data residency. These are legal aspects of where your data resides, right? And then expansion, which is if your company is growing, right? Especially if it is growing geographically, expanding into other new markets, right? How does this infrastructure help you? Okay, so first of all, high availability, right? High availability. So the way you get high availability, in the olden days, there used to be the robustness used to come from the quality of the server, right? So you had say servers from players like IBM, maybe HP, then you had Sun, right? Sun, Solaris, and stuff like that. And the idea was, we'll build something which is so robust, never goes down, right? For example, the server may have multiple power supplies. They do a lot of things in the software to make sure that the machine keeps running, right? So that was the way of getting robustness and high availability earlier, right? But now, for example, people like Google, right? They don't use servers from IBM, HP, and all that, okay? And Sun is no longer there. What they do is they use commodity servers, right? And the high availability is built into the software, okay? And the way they do it is, if a server is not functioning, they just throw it, right? They just bring up another server, right? Or they have multiple servers running anyways, so it doesn't really, one server going bad doesn't really affect the application, right? So the high availability has been moved into the software side, and the hardware used is commodity hardware, right? Because if you start paying, if Google starts paying IBM for hardware, you can imagine, right? Google will not be able to function with that expensive hardware, right? So they had to use commodity hardware, and they had to move the high availability into the software layer, right? So that's now the favored approach, okay? So we don't look for any sophisticated hardware, right? We're talking about commodity hardware on the cloud. So the way to get high availability is to use multiple servers, okay? That's something that you have to understand, that the way to get multiple the high availability fault tolerance is to use multiple servers at the minimum. So if you have, say, web server, right? Don't use one web server, don't use one large web server, use two smaller web servers. That's always better, right? That's always better. Okay, so use multiple instances, because if one goes bad, the other one is still there, and your application is functioning. Okay, all right. Now you can do something better, which is set up those multiple instances in multiple availability zones. Okay, so if you have two servers, if you have two web servers, set them up in two availability zones, right? It never makes sense to have two servers in the same zone. Okay, if you have two web servers, it would be silly to have them in the same zone. Okay, so the next thing that you can do is use multiple zones, because the power supply, only one zone is affected, the other zone will not be affected, so your application will keep functioning. All right, okay. Now, so this is the minimum. You can always have anybody, like any small company, any startup, they can always have multiple instances and multiple zones. It's a minimum you can do, and this is enough usually to give you significant high availability metrics. All right. Now, if you need something better, let's say you're a large company and you want very high availability, extremely high availability, then you can set up multi-region stacks as well. Right? So you have, say, a primary side and a secondary side. This could be, active, or it could be active-passive as well, right? Active-passive as well. And but the point is, you have servers in two regions, right? And the regions are usually geographically spread out, right? So they're far away from each other. So let's say, if you're an India-based business, you may have your primary region as in Mumbai, right? And your secondary region may be Singapore, right? So they're far away. The distance is quite a bit, and therefore it's good. The regions should be far away, because if there's, say, an earthquake, tsunami, that kind of event, right, a natural disaster, then the secondary region should be from a far away location, so that there's no effect, there's no impact, right? So you can set up multi-region as well, if you like. It's not mandatory, right? And most people don't do it, but if you like, you can set up multi-region as well. All right, and then you can also do multi-cloud if you want to de-risk other aspects like the vendor risk, right? What if AWS goes bankrupt tomorrow, right? What if there's some major legal issue? So you can also set up multi-cloud, where part of your infrastructure is in AWS, maybe part of it is in Azure, right? So those kinds of things are also possible. Again, most people don't do it, but you can do these things if you like. All right, so this is how you get high availability, and the main idea is redundancy. Right? You should have more. Don't have only one single point of failure, right? Have more.
have more web servers, have more app servers, right? Have a replication on the database side, and so on. So that's how you get high availability. Okay, and you can see that AWS gives you the capability of doing these things, right? That's why this is important. Okay, for example, your current data center or your own data center, you can't have multi-region setup, right? You also probably don't have multiple availability zones, right? So those things are not possible. Therefore, this is better, much better. All right. Okay, this is a little more detail into how you can set up multi-region or multiple AZ type of setups. All right. The next benefit of this infrastructure is with business continuity, right? Some of you may be from large companies, right? And you might have heard of this term, business continuity, or you might have heard of disaster recovery as a term, right? And a lot of you may be actually very well aware of this, right? And you may have been involved in projects around this as well. So, this, business continuity. Let me share my experience. Right, I used to work in a large bank, and we used to, we had a primary data center in Mumbai, in India, and then we had a secondary data center, the disaster recovery site in Chennai, in South India, right? Which is how it should be. It's pretty far. The two centers are pretty far from each other, right? And we used to do a lot of preparation for disaster recovery. This was mandated by the business, the risk management side of business, right? So we used to do drills annually to practice switching over to the secondary side, and also lots of work used to go into doing this. Things like sending data every day, right? Every day data used to go either over the network or via courier to the secondary site, right? So that the data was up to date in the secondary site. So it was a very, very expensive affair, right, doing all this. And of course, you have to maintain infrastructure in the secondary site, right? The same kind of infrastructure, the same kind of staffing, the same quality, right? So it's a very expensive thing to have disaster recovery type of sites. Okay, and then we actually had a disaster once. Disasters happen very rarely, but some of you may remember in 2004, I think, around that time there were very heavy rains in Mumbai, in India, in very heavy rains, and the whole city was flooded. Right, there was waist high water, chest high water in most places, and during that time there was water flooding into the primary data center of the bank. Okay. So then we had to switch over. We wanted to switch over to the secondary site, but we could not. There was something went wrong, right? And so it was a big mess. It was a big mess. And then the bank decided to just move the data centers out of India and into Singapore or something like that. Okay, so this was an incident I remember. And the point here is that disaster recovery and business continuity, these kinds of things used to be extremely expensive, extremely problematic. And also, they in this case at least, in my experience at least, the whole thing did not work when required, right? So in the cloud, business continuity and disaster recovery is so much better. It's 10, 20 times better than what we used to have before. Okay, why? Because you don't have to spend and create a second data center, right? You simply use another region. You don't have to pay anything. Right? You don't have to pay anything until a disaster happens and you want to move to another region. Right? So there's no cost of your DR site, right? And also, it's very simple to copy your data and application software and images to the secondary site, right? You can create some simple scripts which will copy everything on a nightly basis. Right, so it's very, very simple to do these things as well. And switching over, right? In case there's a disaster, you want to switch to the secondary site, DR site, right? You can write a CloudFormation template, right? This is basically, CloudFormation is an automation tool which can provision your stacks, right, automatically. You don't have to manually go and create, one server one by one, right? All those things don't have to be done. With CloudFormation, you have a template of your stacks, right? You just click a few buttons or you run a script, and CloudFormation will create all your stacks automatically without any intervention, right? And you may have many applications, many stacks, complex stacks, right? All those things can be automated so that with just a few clicks, you can have your whole technology, stacks, all your applications up and running in the secondary region in no time. Right. Of course, you can also do drills. Drills are also very inexpensive, very simple. Right. So the whole business continuity thing is much, much better much better, right, in the cloud than it used to be before the cloud. All right. Next, we have data residency, right? So data residency is a very sensitive topic. Okay, so for example, in the banking world, the regulator would say that you should not have data elsewhere, right? You should have the data in the same country. Okay, and I, for one, in my case, I used to think this is not a big deal. Regulators just are troublesome people, right? They just they just create hurdles, right? And most of their sort of pronouncements don't make sense, right? I never took this very seriously, but in the recent years, you would have seen cases like WikiLeaks, things coming out of WikiLeaks, and Edward Snowden was someone who disclosed how the U.S. government agencies were collecting private data, right? So after these cases, I've become very aware that the data residency is an important topic, right? So when the regulator says, or you as a company may say that, look, I need to keep the data in a certain country, right? In your own country, preferably, right? And these things matter. These things matter. Okay, so that's possible because AWS has data centers or regions in multiple locations, right? So hopefully the region is available in your company's home country, right? And that's where you can place your stacks, right? So it's not it's not cloud in the sense the cloud is cloud, right? Somewhere we don't know where our data is, we don't know where our applications is. It's not like that, right? So you can choose which region you want to use, okay, based on your compliance requirements, right? So Amazon AWS never copies your data or software to another region. Okay, you can do it. You can copy data from one region to another if you like, but AWS does not do that. Okay, so that's by design. That's by design. Okay, and it's done to ensure that you keep your data where you are comfortable with keeping it. Okay, so that's another aspect of the infrastructure. And finally, expansion. Right. So this is Redbus is a company, a local startup, successful startup, and they were expanding to other countries. Right. So let's say from India, you're expanding to say the Asia region or to the Europe region, right? And you may want to set up say server infrastructure in those new markets, right? Your servers should normally be close to where your users are, right? And if you want to do all that, you can easily do that in AWS, because you simply have to, if you want to set up your infrastructure in another region, it's a matter of minutes, right? You can simply create some images, copy your images to the other region, right? And with a few CloudFormation scripts, you can bring up your stacks in the other region in no time. So these things become very, very simple, right? You don't have to, before cloud, you'd have to find a local vendor, right? Maybe go there, see how you can set up your stacks, then you have to monitor, you have to manage, you have to maintain, right? All those things are so simple now because you don't have to go anywhere. Right? Just a few clicks, you can have your stacks up and running in any part of the world. Okay, so this is another aspect of, another benefit of the global infrastructure. All right, okay. Okay, folks. So again, let me stop here, right? Let me stop here. Let's see if you have any further questions. We basically discussed the benefits, right? The benefits of the infrastructure, the regions, and the availability zones that we saw earlier. All right. Okay. Since there are fewer questions, let me cover one more topic. This is how do we pick our region, right? So let's talk about that. Then I'll come back to questions. Okay, so this was we were talking about the residency, right? The data residency. So that's one of the factors that you would consider when you want to pick the region, right? But there are other factors as well. So pricing could be one factor. The location of your customers or users is another factor. Latency, a related topic, right? So these are some of the factors that you have to take into account. So let's take a case, right? So this is a use case where, let's say, you are a multinational company. Right, you're a multinational company, and you have say let's say you have an internal application, you have users, these are employees, let's say, both in the US and in India, let's say. Okay, just a hypothetical case. And the question is, which region will you choose, right? So will you choose a US region, or will you choose an India region, right, or some other third-party region? So that's the question. Okay, so what you have to do is you have to first you'll sort of say, okay, we have an option to host it in Mumbai, right, and North Virginia. Let's say this is US East Coast, right? This is fine. So between these two, which one should we choose? All right. Okay. You also have some instance type in mind. 4x large. This has 64 GB of RAM, 16 virtual CPU, something like that, right? And so how will you choose? So one is pricing, right? So remember that the price can vary. In this case, it is very significant. You can see the difference is quite significant. Mumbai is much more expensive, right? And these are, there are many factors that go into this. So scale can be one factor. The US region will be much larger, right? So they have achieved economies of scale. So that's one region. Also, US is can be cheaper when it comes to cost of land, cost of power, cooling, and so on, right? So we don't know the economics of all that, but basically, from your perspective, you should look at the price and see where these servers are cheaper, right? And if there is a significant difference or not. All right. The other thing that you have to consider is latency, right? So if you keep the servers in India, then the US users will find it slow, right? And vice versa, So these are the factors that you have to take into account, right? We're not looking at legal considerations, right? Here, because this is a multinational company, maybe legal aspects are not that important here, but pricing certainly is, and latency certainly is. Okay, so you have to pick one region based on these factors. All right. Okay, folks. So now let's see if you have any questions. Right. We have basically covered the infrastructure side, right? And now we need to start talking about EC2 instances. But before that, let's make sure all of these are clear. Okay, so this question, Ashok, that means we don't need to have DR backups in case of using AWS. No, you have to have a strategy, right? You need a DR strategy. Okay, you need a DR strategy. Okay, and you need some implementation as well, right? Strategy and process. Okay, so for example, what you may want to do is, copy images and database snapshots and CloudFormation templates. Right? CloudFormation can be used to automatically create stacks in the other region. Okay, so you may have to create all these and copy these to the secondary region on a regular basis. Okay, so these things you may have to do. Then you may need some startup scripts. If you're coming up in the second region, so that you run one script and everything happens automatically, right? So those things you have to do. You have to practice. You have to do drills. All those things you have to do. Okay, but it's very simple, right? It's very simple. It's not as expensive as it would be if you try to do these things outside of the cloud, right? So on the cloud, DR is much better, simpler, right, and less expensive. Okay, so all these things become much easier on the cloud. All right. Okay. So I think Rao, I'll just wait for your question to come up. In the meantime, right? In the meantime, let me give you folks some homework, right? Let's do a little bit of homework here. So first of all, what you should do is create what is called your AWS account, right? So this you can do after the class, but you should do this as soon as possible, okay? Because this is your AWS account. You have to create it, and then you will have to use this for practice, right? So if you delay this, then your practice will kind of get delayed, right? So do this as soon as possible, and basically you have to sign up, right? Sign up for an AWS account. Use the basic plan. Okay, select the basic plan that has no monthly fee. Okay, so select a plan which has no monthly fee. It's called a basic plan, right? And once you do that, you will have to enter your credit card. Okay, remember, you need a valid credit card when you sign up, but don't worry, right? You'll not be charged. You may be charged a small fee, maybe a $1 fee or a ₹1 fee, and that's more of a verification charge, right? Just to make sure that the card is a valid card. Okay, so that may be there, but otherwise you'll not be charged. Okay, unless you start using resources, etc. Okay, and also remember there's a free tier, right? A free tier is available for 1 year. 1 year after you sign up. Okay, and the free tier includes a limited amount of free resources. Okay, so for example, when it comes to EC2 instances, you get 750 hours per month. Okay, it doesn't matter how many instances you launch. Okay, you can launch 10 servers if you like, but totally the usage should not be more than 750 hours. Okay, and it's only for micro instances, right? So don't choose any other instance unless you're willing to pay for it. Okay, so you have to be careful. You have to understand free tier and read about free tier carefully. Okay, and make sure that you're within the free tier limits. All right, and even if you're not within the free tier limits, right, it's okay, right? You should not keep worrying about the cost too much. The most important thing is for you to be disciplined and clean up, right? So if you launch something, just make sure that you terminate, you clean up after you finish practicing, right? That's the most important thing. And staying within free tier is fine. You can keep an eye out for it, right? But don't worry too much about that as well. Okay, but please create this free tier account as soon as possible. Okay, and then just do a search on AWS free tier and read up about the free tier as well. Okay, so understand what free tier is, understand the limits, right? Understand the limits of free tier for EC2, understand the limits for S3, understand the limits for RDS, right? All services, most of the services have some free tier availability, right? But you should understand it very carefully. Okay, so this is your homework. All right, please make sure that you do this as soon as possible. Please make sure you do this as soon as possible. All right. Okay. Okay, let me answer this question, and then I think we'll be out of time. We'll end the session at that point, and tomorrow we'll continue with module 1. We have to talk about EC2 instances a bit, and also we have to talk about purchasing options for EC2 instances. Okay, so that's coming up tomorrow. All right, Rao, does Amazon provide latency guide for different countries based on location? No, but no, so there's no such thing as far as I know, right? No, as far as I know. But then what is it for, right? You presumably want to know where to keep your region stacks and how much the latency is. So that's easy enough to find out. You can just there are other ways and other tools maybe that you can use, right? So you can figure out the latency quite easily. Okay, so you don't need something special from Amazon. You can figure that out quite easily. Right? For example, if you have if you have an office in the other location, you can just ask them to check do a trace route or something like that and see what the latency is. Okay, but no such tool from AWS. there is, in round 53, there is something called latency-based routing. Okay, so in round 53, there is latency-based routing, which can route users to the location, to the region which has the best latency for that user, right? So maybe you can use this one. Okay, you can use something like this so that your users always get the best latency. All right. Okay. And yeah, so I think someone has suggested this site as well, Cloud Ping. So maybe this is a kind of a tool that you can use to ping the region and figure out what the latency is. Yeah. So it's a good comment here. All right. Okay. Okay, folks. So I think we're out of time. You can keep enter your questions even after the session. By the way, all right. So you might be reading up on something, you might be practicing something, and if you have any questions, you can enter those questions in the sheet even after the session, right? Off hours as well, and we'll try and cover all those questions at some point or the other. All right. Okay, folks. So I think we're out of time. Let's stop here, and I'll see you tomorrow, and we'll continue with the module one agenda. All right. Okay. So have a good night. Have a good day. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.